Hey everyone, it's Kayla from KJ and her books again with another video. So today I am just going to be talking about the books that I read last month, the month of January, the first month of 2020, the month of the Project Reread 2020 as well. Also, if you can't tell, we're in a completely different location, one that has just a little bit better lighting and probably a little bit more comfortable than sitting on the floor. In the month of January, I participated and co-hosted in Project Reread 2020, which was basically just a readathon focused solely on rereading books that you've loved in the past. I chose the path of rereading books from my childhood, or from at least 10 years ago, and I really enjoyed it. I had such a good time rereading these books. It just made me remember how much I love reading and how it all began. So let's just get this on a roll and see what I managed to complete. So in the month of January, I read a total of 6 books. The first 3 being from a series which I don't have all of the books for, but they're the only ones that I own, and I really loved them. I read them when I was in primary school. And these 3 books were the Avalon Web of Magic series, books 1, 2, and 3 by Shelley Roberts. We have Circles in the Stream, All That Glitters, and Cry of the Wolf. Now, this series follows 3 girls who come across a magical forest that gives them magical gems that they can use to make magic. And they realize that they all have different powers to sort of match up with what their personalities are like. Our first character is Emily. She's the shy new kid, not quite sure where she fits in at the moment in this new town, but trying to find her way. She's not exactly the kind of person who believes in magic. Then we have Adrienne. She is a very, I wouldn't say cold-hearted, but she doesn't like to show what she's feeling. She's quite hard. She has a hard outer shell. She's a little bit weird, a little bit strange. She's the person that nobody likes to really talk to because of her weirdness. And she doesn't have a lot of friends, or any friends really. And then the other girl we have is Cara, who is the cliched popular girl who thinks that she's better than everybody. Very spoiled and snobby. So these 3 girls basically come together and they're trying to work out who they are in this new magical world and what their purpose is in this new world. And I really want to get the next books, or like the rest of these books, because I really loved reading these 3 again. It really brought me back to the magic of my childhood and my imagination, and it was just a lot of fun to read them. And I look forward to getting some more in the future so I can actually finish this series and see what happens, because I've never known. I've only ever had these 3 books. I only ever read these 3 books, so I have no idea what happens in the rest of the series, but I want to know. The next one I have is more of a recent read for me, probably in the last 10 years. I think the last 10 years. Most definitely in the last few years was when I picked it up. It was one of those books that I found in like a $5 bin, and I thought, hey, this sounds interesting. I'm going to try and read it and see how I go. And that is Gwen Rowley's Knights of the Round Table, Gawain. So she has written 3 of these books. She's got Gawain, she's got Lancelot, and I can't think of the other one, but I don't have it. I've got this one and Lancelot. And they follow very different stories, sort of coinciding with the King Arthur legend, but a very different take on these particular knights, and drawing inspiration from a lot of the stories and the legends that we know from this particular era. And this is by far one of my favorite books to read. I love it so much. It just has a kind of Beauty and the Beast story, the whole breaking a curse sort of thing, and because it's King Arthur and it's set in this like day and age, I love it even more, because that's one of my favorite things to read or watch is about King Arthur or Camelot. Like, I just love it so much for some reason. I love the knights, I love the magic. It's also exciting and interesting to me. For this particular one, we follow a knight called Gawain, and he in this particular story is King Arthur's nephew, and also the heir to the throne if in case something happens to King Arthur. And 5 years prior to this story, he had fallen in love with a girl called Aislinn. Aislinn had been working for Morgause, who, as you all know, if you've paid attention to the legends of King Arthur, she is a really, really bad woman. She is a very all-powerful sorcerer who deals in a lot of dark magic. She's not exactly the best person in the world. She's also Gawain's mother in this story, and she had Aislinn working for her to try and bring down Arthur, but Aislinn also fell in love with Gawain, and there was just a whole lot of crap that happened, and they ended up not seeing each other for 5 years. At the beginning of this story, Arthur and Gawain have been working on an answer to a riddle that was given to them by this knight called Soma Groma Jaw, I think that's how you pronounce it, and they had a certain amount of time before they had to go and see him again. So they're on the way to see him to give him the answer to this riddle, because if they did, King Arthur would live. If they didn't, he would die. Then they come across this crone in the woods who actually gives them the answer to the riddle, and all is well. But the catch is that Gawain has to marry this crone. In order to save King Arthur's life, he decides, yes, I will marry you, and they get the answer. All is well, and it turns out that the crone is actually Aislinn, who had decided, you know what, I'm going to play a trick on him because he betrayed me. Long story. They both, a lot of miscommunication with their relationship, but they both think the other had betrayed them. So she decided, you know what, I'm going to take a potion, I'm going to make myself look like a crone, and I'm going to laugh when I trick him into marrying me. So that's what she does, but it turns out she actually ends up getting cursed into this form and has no way of getting out of it without true love's kiss. So it's very much like Beauty and the Beast sort of story with the curse. It's so much fun, although I do remember when I read it the first time that there was a lot more smut sexy scenes in it, but in fact there was a lot less than I had expected, which is, I'm not complaining because it's still a great story. I still love the romance, but it was just weird that I remembered something completely different with it, and there were so many things that I'd actually forgotten in this book that I don't remember reading, but I guess that's what happens when you haven't read a book in so long. But it was awesome to reread it. I still love this story. It's just so beautiful, and it really puts you into the world of Camelot. It's just so interesting and so much fun, and I love it. It's one of my favorite books to read. It's just so good, funny, romantic, just very well written. I love it. I really do. The next one I have is one that I read over and over and over when I was in primary school, and that was Charm Club Fairy by Belinda Ray. I have just discovered that there are quite a few more books in this particular series. I, however, only read this one, and of course I read this one because it came with a fairy charm. Don't know what happened to it, but as a kid I believe I lost it, which is why I love this story so much, because I relate a lot to the main character. The main character in this is Teresa Allen, and she's very forgetful, very disorganized, not so much unreliable, but you don't really want to go to her to look after something. Chances are she's probably going to lose it. And as a kid, I definitely related to this so much because I was a forgetful kid. I still am. And I lost a lot of things. So it was good to read a story about someone who was very similar to me. So she ends up being in charge of the Spring Carnival, which is where all of the grades have their own little setups with various different stalls at this carnival, and they get judged on how well the stalls are and how well everything is organized. And she is put in charge, freaking out because everyone is doubting her ability to organize it all, knowing what she's like. And since the 5th grade has never won a year at all, it puts a lot more pressure on her as well. But when she's trying to get herself organized, she ends up coming across a fairy who comes off her pen. She comes alive, and she helps her realize that she's not as bad as everybody and herself thinks she is. She can actually pull things together really well. She can get organized and she can do these things. She just needs to believe in herself. So that's pretty much the story. It's just a lot of fun. Like, it's such a short story. It took me no time at all to read, but I really enjoyed it because I love fairies and I love that I could relate to this main character. It's just so interesting. It's like something you would watch as like an after school special. It's a really good book, and it's just something that's fun and a little bit of light reading if you want something that's funny and it teaches you something important that you need to know as well. It's just a good story. Definitely one of my favorites to reread. And the last one I have for you today is not exactly a reread, although I have read the story before, so technically I put it in the rereadathon because I'm rereading the story, but not necessarily the format, if that makes sense. And that is the Hobbit Revised Edition graphic novel by J.R.R. Tolkien. And I bought this not too long ago. I love The Hobbit. I love Lord of the Rings. I haven't actually read Lord of the Rings, but that's a whole nother story. But I loved The Hobbit and I wanted to reread it as well, but I thought, hey, I have the graphic novel there. I haven't actually read the graphic novel. How about we give that a try? So I thought, because I'd already read the story, it was the same thing. I knew what was going to happen, but it was just in a graphic novel form. So technically, I feel like I kind of reread it as well, if you know what I mean. But either way, I still really enjoyed this. I loved the illustrations in this. They were absolutely gorgeous and hilarious. It was just awesome. I laughed at the way Gollum was portrayed in this. Like, he was very accurate to what I can imagine you would have pictured had you not seen the movie. And yeah, it was very well done. I thought it was going to be weird because, you know, graphic novels are quite quick and The Hobbit is very detailed in a way, like it's told a very specific way. But it definitely worked very well. There were some instances where I thought, yeah, this is a little bit fast paced for my liking, but that's what happens in The Hobbit anyway. Like, it's just sort of bam, bam, bam with the events. It's not very like flowy in a way. Like, it's just, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. It's just sort of set out that way, which is kind of what I expected. But I really enjoyed reading it in a graphic novel form. It was a lot of fun. It was a very different way to read a classic story, and I really enjoyed it. And there's no reason for me to explain what The Hobbit is about, because I feel like everybody should know what The Hobbit is about by now. It's basically about a character named Bilbo who is a hobbit, and he goes on a journey with a few dwarves to help them reclaim their home that has been stolen from a dragon. That's it. They go through many different adventures, and it just makes for a very entertaining and beloved story, and I love it. Well, there you go, guys. That is my January wrap up. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I'd like to know what books you read last month as well. And as per usual, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Even check me out on Twitter and Instagram, because yes, I use Twitter now. What am I? But yeah, I will talk to you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye!